Oh, welcome to Castle Anamkara. My name's David O'Connor, and I am the Lord of the Castle. In addition to being a science consultant to the agricultural sector, you can probably tell I love being surrounded by beautiful flowers and nice edible vegetables. At the request of a lot of you, I've started to do a series of videos on subjects that hopefully will help you become a better gardener, helping you grow prettier flowers, tastier vegetables, spending less time in the garden when you don't want to, and spending less money. If you'd like more information on our home and how you can visit, that info is at the end of this video too. So come on, join me at the castle for this week's episode. Hey gardeners, welcome back. Good to see you again. It's about the middle of July. We've gone from a pretty severe drought situation in the spring to now we've had a monsoon. Everything's been well watered, the sun's come out, and things are really starting to take off. I grow all of my tomatoes in containers for a number of different reasons, which we've talked about in other videos. So today I want to look at one specific question that I get asked a lot at this time of year, and that's, do I need to prune my tomatoes? How I answer that depends on a couple of things. The primary thing being, what type of tomato are you growing? We have two major types of tomatoes that you might be growing. The first is called an indeterminate variety. Indeterminate variety means as long as the weather's good and you're feeding it and it's getting water, it'll just keep growing and growing and growing, and these things are almost unlimited to how large they can get. So indeterminate, which is what most of you are probably growing, and it covers most of the things like heirlooms, a lot of the hybrids, all your Big Boy, Better Boy series. Most of the tomatoes, again, that you're going to buy are going to be indeterminate tomatoes. The other major group is what we call a determinate tomato. Genetically, it will grow to a certain size, stop putting size on, and then give you your harvest of tomatoes. Some of the tomatoes that you might be familiar with in this determinate variety are things like Celebrity, Roma. So just check the seed pack or look up online what type you have. So, do I have to prune my tomatoes? The simple answer to that is no. There is no reason that you have to prune your tomatoes. There is still a lot of debate out in the agricultural world of should you, shouldn't you, how much, yes, no, do it now, do it later. So what we'll do is just look at a couple of the basic, widely accepted concepts about pruning tomatoes out there, and we'll go from there. So number one, you do not have to prune your tomatoes. But if you decide to prune them, why would you want to prune them? The primary reason as to why you might want to prune your tomatoes is that it will help you be preemptive in making a plant that is more resistant to bugs, bacterium, viruses, and fungal diseases. The reason being that if we do some pruning, it will let more light in, which increases the photosynthesis of the plant, and it will also increase the airflow around the plants and in the plant area. That in itself will help keep the plant drier and less prone to picking up some of these viral, bacterial, and fungal diseases. So I've got some different varieties of tomatoes planted here. So let's look at a couple of those and do a little bit of light pruning. This is one of the indeterminate cherry tomato varieties. This is Sun Gold, the nice little orange cherry tomato, one of my favorites. You can see by looking at the base of the plant that it's got leaves that are touching the ground, it's fairly tight, and that this plant could benefit from a little bit of pruning to open up the base here to a better airflow and keep any splash from the ground from getting onto the leaves and transferring bacterial, fungal, or virus to this plant. Let me zoom in a tiny bit and show you what we're going to be pruning out here. So what I'm going to do is take my little shears that I've disinfected, and I'm going to start pruning out some of this tight matter and the matter, the leaves that are touching the ground. So you can see I haven't gotten overly aggressive, but we have opened this up in here, taken off any leaves that were touching the ground, and this will make for a much healthier environment for this plant. For indeterminate cherry tomatoes, which have this lighter, airier, more open format, I really won't do anything up above this point on pruning, because there's no need to. These are so prolific. Almost every shoot that comes off will produce flowers and fruit. So as far as my indeterminate, my cherry tomatoes, this one's good to go. Let's move on to the next plant. So we just finished up some light pruning on an indeterminate cherry tomato. Now we want to look at an indeterminate conventional variety. This is probably a big boy or a better boy. Before we start pruning this plant, what I want to do is make sure that I disinfect the little shears that we used to prune the last plant. If we don't, we run the risk of passing a disease that that plant might have onto this plant. What I'm using is just a standard 70% isopropyl alcohol, and again, we're doing it so that we don't pass diseases back and forth. You'll notice that the form of these more conventional indeterminates is kind of bushier and thicker as opposed to the lighter and airier form of a cherry tomato. But you can still see down here we have leaves that are bending down and touching the ground. So what we want to do, just like we did on the cherry tomato, is we want to prune off some of these leaves. Now when we prune tomatoes, something that we want to keep in mind, and this always comes up when we talk about pruning any plant, is you can get this attitude of, well, look at how airy, I'm going to take a whole bunch more of these leaves off and it'll be just a tomato sitting there in the sun. Remember, these are the factories where photosynthesis takes place that produce all of the compounds that are necessary to go into building the flavors, building the tomato, having the plant actually grow, producing dry matter. So we have to keep a balance between how much we prune and not pruning too much and cutting down that plant's ability to make sugars for itself, which it needs to produce both the plant matter and the fruit. So we're pruning judiciously to open it up, prevent the leaves from touching the ground, but not over pruning. And when we start looking at, if you're online and you're saying, well, I want to look at how to prune a tomato, everybody's always talking about the suckers. So let's take a look at what a sucker is. So here's a good example of a little sucker. The sucker is a shoot that comes up between the main stem and a leaf. And you can see it, here's one of the main stems here, an offshoot leaf, and then we have this sprouting up between the leaf and the main stem. Why might we want to prune that off? Well, for a couple of different reasons. Number one, if we let them go, they will take energy away from the plant that it wants to put into developing the fruit. So these suckers, most of them, by the time we get to the end of the season and near frost, they won't put out any flowers and therefore no tomato fruit. So they're really just going to be sitting there taking energy away from the plant. So we can just snip these suckers off, and you can look around your tomato plant. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to disinfect my shears again. I'm going to walk down the line. I'm going to prune all of the lower branches that are touching the ground off. I'm going to remove anything with yellow on it, and I'm not going to do much more than that. These guys will produce well. Keep them fed in the sun. Keep your watering consistent, and make sure you're giving a fertilizer with calcium to prevent that blossom end rot. So tomato growers, that's about all you need to know on pruning. I'll have another video out next week on how to use rainwater to water your garden, but it's different than using well water or tap water, so make sure to tune in for that one. Until then, be good to each other, and remember, you need to know what your plants need to grow.